Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Real Talk with Ben podcast here. And I am so excited that you decided to tune in, that you've decided to listen, whether it's Thursday or whether it's Friday or whether it's 3 years from now when I'm recording this, whatever it is. I'm super glad that you decided to tune in and to listen to hopefully some encouragement and hopefully some reflection maybe in your own life through this. And so I'm so happy you decided to join me. And if you're new, my name is Ben, and this is my podcast where I talk about life. I talk about things going on in the world. I talk about ministry and just really anything that comes up in my mind. I decided to share it with you all, and hopefully you get some encouragement from it. And so if you are new and this is the first time you're listening, I hope that this will be encouraging, but that also that maybe you'll come back for more episodes in the future and to hear what God has put on my heart that I can share it with you. And so, as always, I welcome everyone here, and I hope you all have a great day, and I hope you enjoy this episode. And so let's get into this episode. Ben, what are we talking about today? Well, we are going to be talking about, or I never know how to say that. We are going to be talking about things that I have learned so far in 2020. Now, I know a few episodes I talked about how we can change 2020, how we can improve 2020, which is great. And I think that is important. But these are things that I've learned in 2020, and it's not necessarily surrounded politically or anything like that. It's just things in my own heart that I've learned in 2020. And to be honest, most of this evolves around being a missionary and those kind of things. And so I want, before I begin though, I want to focus on this, that one, I serve an amazing God, as you all know, but I think more importantly, that everything I'm about to say, it just shows the grace of God. It shows the goodness of God. It shows how amazing of a God we have, and how every lesson that he has taught me, everything that I've learned, it's one of those things where I think I realize that, God doesn't just do something because, he feels like it. No, God does something for a purpose. It's to glorify him. It's to help us learn, help us grow. And so that's what I want you to get out of this at the beginning, is just that. And so, I have 4 things, but to be honest, they really can go in any order. I just had to choose an order in order to talk about it, I guess. Anyways, the first thing that I've really learned in 2020, and something that you've heard me probably say multiple times, either on Friday recaps or on other podcast episodes, is the idea of change. Something I've learned about focusing around change is just that change became it almost became an idol in my life. And I know that sounds so weird, and some might not understand that. But change became an idol because I was so focused on, I guess change didn't become an idol, more or less. It was more comfort. And it still sounds weird that comfort would become an idol, but that's how it affected change. So not necessarily change became an idol, but comfort became an idol in my life that affected change. And what I mean by that is I didn't like change. I never thought I didn't like change, but I was realizing as I came here as a missionary, things went crazy. The coronavirus hit, and, not living where I wanted to live or expected to live, not serving in the ways that I thought I'd be serving. I realized very early on that comfort became an idol in my life, and I wasn't okay with not having that comfort, not having that normal feeling, that normal understanding. And so change then, that affected change. And I think change has really been something that I've learned, that change is not necessarily something to hurt us. It's not necessarily something that is always a bad change. I think sometimes, at least in my life, I've always seen change as like, oh, this is going to be terrible, or this is just a negative consequence. But in reality, God uses change in a positive way. And for me, a positive way for change was humbling me, God humbling me, and making me realize that ministry is not just where we are, but it's what we're doing, and the sense of that whatever we're doing it for God's glory. And God wanted me to focus on building relationships, building friendships, but then also working hard in the forest and doing things I wasn't expected and to live in the castle longer. But change became something that I had to learn was a good thing. I had to learn that change was not just something that is terrible or is something that's just going to hurt you, but in reality, change is something that is very important, and we can't make progress if we don't change. And I think I just learned in 2020 so far, 6 months in. Excuse me. I think I learned that change is an essential part of our Christian walk. And I think I've always known that in a sense, but I don't think I've been able to see it or apply it in my life until I understood it, until I could visually understand it. And so that's been a huge thing for me, is the idea of change and the idea of, because of change, it kind of showed me some of the things I struggled with comfort and stuff like that, where I don't know if I would have noticed it if I would have came over here and things would have been normal and I'd be doing the normal things that I should be doing or that I expected to do. That's another thing. Like, we can't expect to necessarily do what we want to do. That's why I always tell people that are trying to make plans. I always tell people that don't expect anything because maybe God doesn't want you doing whatever you expected. Maybe it's something totally different. And I think we have to be willing for that. We have to be willing to listen and to trust in God. And that's a perfect segue into the second one, which is trust. I don't think I ever struggled with trust. I think in my life, I really don't. I don't think I've ever, maybe in certain cases or with certain people, but I think overall I'm pretty, I tend to trust people. I tend to trust people, what they say. It can backfire on me. But I don't think I've ever lost that. But I will say it's been very hard to trust and to see what God is doing in my life and in what he's doing here. It's been something that I've had to learn. I've had to learn to trust. And it's something that I didn't think I had to learn. I thought I knew what trust was. I thought I knew I had trust in my life. But in reality, I'm sorry, that was loud. But in reality, it's something that I guess I struggled with a little bit. And it became more of reality as I grew in my walk with Christ over these past few months of being here. And especially even again, this is not just 2020 since I've been a missionary. This is 2020 going back to proceeding, become a missionary. Because I think during this fundraising part at the end of 2019 and then early 2020, it was very hard to trust God and to say, like, God, I don't understand. Like, I see that you're doing something, but I don't see any of the support coming in. I don't see anything like that. But again, I had to see trust. I had to understand it. Excuse me. Sorry. Terrible yawn. Anyways, again, I think this yawn only happened. I've recorded 2 videos today of the behind the lens, and I feel like today the yawns only affect this show, and it's every time I have the podcast episode. That's besides the point. But trust, yeah. So I had to really dig deep into God's word and to really learn about trust, and not just trusting other people, but trusting Him. And it sounds easy, and it sounds like something that should be so point blank, but it's not. Trusting in God is something that I think all Christians struggle with at some point in their life. And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I totally am, and you can let me know. But I know in my life, I don't think that there's ever been like a straight period where I'm like, yes, I trust you. It's like I always have that doubt, and I shouldn't. I should always trust God. But I think there's just something about that human fallen nature that, like, yeah, well, I just don't see it. And like, we have to visualize it. And like, that's me being a visual person. And it's sometimes hard for me to trust God in that sense, but for some reason I can trust people, and it shouldn't be that way. And so I've learned this 2020 so far is that I need to stop just trusting what I see, but trusting what I don't see. It's something that I think is so important, that if we can learn how to trust something we don't see, then trusting what we see becomes so much more fruitful. It becomes so much more, you understand so much more. And then that trusting what you don't see, and when it happens, it's like, whoa, God, you are amazing. And so that's why I think, and that trust builds into your walk with Christ. And it's kind of interesting because the next point kind of goes in with this, and, trusting in God is having faith in God's plan. Trusting God's having faith in what is going to happen with you in the future, not knowing that what's going to happen. And so, that's the third point is having faith. I've learned so much, not even just this year, but I think every year that I get ready to come to Hungary, is having faith is not just something that you say. Having faith is something you have to do in your own life, everywhere you go, every decision you make, every thought that comes to your mind. You have to have faith. You have to rely on God's faithfulness. I say this after every episode of pretty much everything I do here on the Bowden Experience, and that is, God is faithful. We can trust him. Again, that trust and that faithfulness, it goes hand in hand. But it's really hard sometimes, because if you don't have that one, how can you have faith in something that you don't trust? Or how can you trust in something that you don't have faith in? It's hand in hand. And God, we serve an amazing God that is faithful. And it took me, as I was finishing Raise Support and going, God, I don't know if I'm going to get to Hungary. I don't know if I'll be able to serve you. And that doubt tried to trample both my faith and my trust. And it did sometimes, but then God always trounced back. God was like the double-edged sword that said, you know what, I'm going to take out all that you have that you don't think that I understand, or that I don't see you struggling with. And I know when God really, he answered so many prayers of God, I don't know how it's going to get done, but I want it to happen. And not only did I have to learn how to have faith, and of course I had to learn how to really have true faith in what God was doing, because, like I've said multiple times before, I didn't know when I was flying out. I didn't know if I was going to have my ticket on time, but having faith in God allowed me to trust God, which then showed so much fruit and so much blessing as I arrived here in Hungary, realizing that if I arrived a week and a half later, I wouldn't have been able to get into the country, or if they would have pushed me back, I wouldn't have been able to be here right now. It's having faith and trusting in God. Something I think we all at times in our lives go, God, I don't get what you're doing. God, how can I trust you? And that's a question I still ask myself. Just because I have seen God be faithful doesn't mean I don't ask that question. It's probably not right for me to ask that question. I should still have just unlimited faith. I shouldn't have to worry about this kind of stuff, because I should focus on what Christ has done for me, and seen already the bounds of what he has done in my life and in people's lives. But yet we're a sinful and fallen people, and we need Christ, and he is the only answer. So many times I try to fill what I think is missing with everything, but having faith in what God is going to do in the future. And so I think I would challenge anybody that is struggling with that, or anybody that's struggling to trust God, and saying, God, I don't get what you're doing in my life. I don't understand why I lost my job. I don't understand why my girlfriend broke up with me, or my fiance said, I don't want to do this now, or maybe why I lost my car or my house, or whatever your circumstance is. And you might be asking that question, why, God? Why? A friend challenged me once, instead of saying, why, God, saying, what's next, God? Because instead of saying, why, God, you're saying, what's next, God? What do you want me to do next? I am trusting in you, but I need you to show me and to guide me. And when you put all your faith into him and say, I just need to know, I need to understand, I want to follow you, whatever you want me to do, he starts opening up those pathways. You get to understand why he made a decision. And maybe we won't, but he helps you understand. And maybe you won't fully understand, but it brings that peace to your mind when you know that, okay, God's in control. And so people always ask me, why after every video do I say, I serve an amazing God, and I want to remind you that God is faithful and you can trust him. Why do I say that? Because not only is I hope a reminder to you all, but it's a reminder to myself that I serve an amazing God and that he is faithful. He's never doubted us. He's never given up on us, and that we can trust him. Because again, faith and trust go in hand to hand. Without one, you can't have the other. So that's having faith. And that's what I've learned since 2020 began and through everything I've been through. But I think the craziest thing that I've learned in 2020 over everything so far, we're over 6 months in, is that life as a missionary, or life as leading up to being a missionary and being a missionary, is very hard. And I know you're probably like, Ben, I hear that at church all the time from missionaries. And I did too. I didn't believe them. I said, you know what? Yeah, I bet it's hard, but I mean, it can't be that bad. You just raise support and then you go, share the word with the world. Yeah, partly, but raising support wasn't that easy. It took me many times breaking down and crying and saying, God, I don't know if I can do this. And God constantly, once again, being faithful and saying, no, this isn't comfortable, but I'm going to help mold you and shape you into the man I want you to be. And it's still one of the coolest things to see as a missionary, to see the people that have poured into your life for many years, and then to help you grow, help you go out into the world and share the gospel is really cool. And again, I think another thing with being a missionary is something that's hard, is that there's so much unknown. There's so much that you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. I mean, look at this year, for example. I had no idea this is what I was walking into. But I think that's also what makes being a missionary so amazing, is that it's not repetitive. It's something new. And yeah, obviously, I'm doing video editing right now and that for the next few months. But it's so cool to see the impact that it has, and to see people that really do enjoy certain things. And I think life as a missionary can be hard too, because you're away from family. And for me, being a family guy, especially someone that really loves spending time with them, it can be hard. But again, it goes right back to God and the idea that if we trust in him and we surround ourselves with God in our lives, it makes everything so much more, so much more understandable. But it also makes everything so much more, it almost makes everything more easier to handle, more or less. And it might not be easy, but it's like, okay, God's in control. So I have to remind myself that every day, that God is in control, and that there's nothing that I can do that is going to take him out of control. He's always going to be there. And so I think what I want to challenge you all with is that stop thinking that God is not doing enough for you, or stop thinking that God is not giving you what you think you need. Because God's not in that business. God is in the business of, I'm going to do what's best for my glory. I'm going to do what's best for my children. And ultimately that's what he's doing with our lives. I mean, we look at the world right now and we think chaos, but God knows what he's doing. God knows exactly what is going to happen in the next 10 minutes, in the next 4 hours, in the next 4 years. Excuse me. He knows. Wow, that was weird. He knows what's going on. And so something that I do to help me is I journal, but I also just look at things in the last week, and I look at my blessings. I almost count my blessings and say, all right, God, I've seen you work. But then I also count the ways that I'm thinking, God, I don't see you working. And I pray about those and I say, God, what do you want me to do here? Because when we look at our lives, and we look at our lives as something that is not just something that we dangle with, but instead our lives are something with purpose, and our lives are something that we use to pursue God and to pursue sharing the gospel to the rest of the world. If we look at it that way, then in reality, we are walking with that trust and that faith in Christ. And so, I've learned a lot so far in 2020, and obviously there's probably more things as well. But I think what's so cool about 2020 is, yes, it's been hard for many of us. It's been different for many of us. And so many people are like, let's get rid of 2020. Why? Some of the best things you ever do in life is learn, and learning some of the tough things are what we need, especially as Christians. There's so much darkness in this world right now. I know I want to be a difference and I want to make a difference. I pray that you all do as well. I pray that you will all have that mindset of, God, I don't know what you're doing in my life and in my friends' lives, but I trust you, and I want what you think is best. And so as we go through the rest of 2020, these next 6 months, 6 months, let's look at 2020 not as, wow, this is lost, but let's look at 2020 and say, not only can we try to get it better, but let's look at 2020 and say, this is my learning year. God, what do you want me to learn during this year? And I want to apply it to make 2021 so much better than 2020, and then make 2022 so much better. Because if we look at life and we say, God, I want you to be the center of it, then there's so much less to worry about. There's so much less to get frustrated about. And so once again, I just want to say that, you're not alone in this. If you ever need to talk, I am a message away. I would love to talk with you. I would love to hear what God's put on your heart, and hopefully we can talk about it. And I love fellowship. I love doing that. So I would love to talk to you. But then also, I'm going to remind you that we serve an amazing God, and that he is so faithful, and that we can trust him always. And so once again, I just want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy listening to this, especially if it's on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, go ahead and favorite this podcast itself and the episodes, and that way it pops up right when you need to see it every week. And if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and click that thumbs up button. That lets me see that you enjoy this episode. But then also click that subscribe button and also that notification bell. That way you can see basically whenever I come out with a video, behind the lens episodes, podcast episodes, Friday recap, and also any other, short films and other videos that I do here on the channel. That allows you to kind of see what is going on. So once again, I just want to say, I love you all. Thank you for the support, and that never worry about what's happening next. Just focus on Christ, and he'll provide the answer you need. And so, as I always say, we'll talk next time.